I love palindrome.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Eye Opener Society. You have me, Hannah,
And me, Gary.
and welcome to part two of the series. We have Leslie and Stephen returning with us. How are you guys doing?
Super. Thank you so much for having us again.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for sticking out with us for two parts for the show. We appreciate you guys so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we really enjoy having on because this is my most favorite topic in the entire world. I could sit and do like a 30-hour podcast on this kind of stuff. But I'm just excited because I read this book and it's a fantastic book, and I think you all need to get it. Amazon.com is one place to get it. And I'm going to have all the links and all the synopsises for the show. But Leslie and Stephen Shaw are the authors of Who They Are and What They're Up To. And this here second part, I think we're going to have them talk about their theory.
Sure.
Right around third chapter or so, right? You guys started talking about the whole theory of what you guys think. So I'm literally going to turn the microphone over to both of you and explain exactly what you guys wrote and what you guys believe.
Well, when we began doing our research, right away, we started seeing that UFO theories and UFO facts were not lining up. There was this theory out that, the tall ones are coming from over there, and Alpha Centauri and the Pleiades, and they're all coming from all over the place, right? But we determined that they're actually being seen 10,000 times per year worldwide, every year, going back hundreds of years, maybe, right? Or even thousands.
Reported.
And so, reported sightings are really only about 10% of real sightings. So we're seeing them 100,000 times a year. Just the numbers alone, we're starting to strain credulity that they're coming here from these vast distances. And also the alien abduction phenomenon wasn't lining up with the theories either. The theories were that just aliens were sort of curious about us and they were coming here to get samples and no big deals for scientific research. But that's also not what's happening. What we determined was that abductees are taken again and again and again through their lives, and then their children are taken and their grandchildren. It's like the aliens are finding a specific strand of DNA, a strain that meets their criteria, and they prey on that family for generations. And like what happened with Steve's family, we've determined it goes back 4 generations in his family.
So far. So
we started to have those problems with the theories, and we pitched the theory. When the theories and facts don't line up, right, you have no choice but to throw the theory out and start over, And the more we looked into the phenomenon, we determined that they are not coming here from distant star systems. They're launching these UFOs from terrestrial bases. And we've heard tell of many underground, hollowed out mountains and cities underground. There's a lot of ancient lore about people descending underground and to move their entire population underground. And then we saw the Admiral Byrd data. Steve had his diary for many years, and we'd read that, of course. Most people know about the diary where Admiral Byrd describes meeting a people that live under the ice sheet. They're people that call themselves the Ariani, and they're men. They're tall, blonde, blue-eyed men.
The ones that he met, yes.
The ones that he met. And then we found out about this Russian documentary that goes into that it was released in the 80s on Russian television. But the source for this was an intelligence report from the 40s. Apparently, at one point, Admiral Byrd, well, let me back up. In the 30s, Hitler was combing the Queen Maud Land coast, the Antarctic coast, with his U-boats.
Yeah, because of the UFO that was found by Mussolini in 37.
Right. So they had a crashed UFO, and so they already knew at least, they had that information. And they then suddenly they were sending all this equipment to Antarctica ships with mining equipment and personnel and engineers and huge resources he was deploying to Antarctica. And then so after the war, U.S. intelligence surmised that there may be a Nazi base under the ice sheet of Antarctica, and they sent Admiral Byrd with Operation High Jump. It was a carrier group, like an armada, to go wipe out this base. That was his task. But when they got there, these squadron of UFOs emerged from the ocean, shot a ray of some kind at the ships, and sank a destroyer and downed half of his aircraft, killing dozens of men, and then disappearing back in the ocean. Once we started applying Admiral Byrd's stories to our UFO data, suddenly it started to click and make sense. This is why they're seeing thousands upon thousands of times a year. They live here. And this is why, and the abduction phenomenon, it's 9 out of 10 abductees are Caucasian. And we only make up 16% of the population. So what's the big deal? Why are they after Caucasians specifically? It made no sense that an alien race coming from a far distance would particularly care which race we are, right?
Right.
But if they are a breakaway population of human beings that just happen to be Caucasian human beings, then they would have all kinds of use for Caucasian genetic material, Caucasian DNA. And we've surmised that they've lived under the underground for so long that it's possible that they're becoming less viable. And that is why they have to take regular infusions of DNA from surface persons. And the same thing is true for the cattle mutilations. We think when they went underground, they took herds of cattle and other domesticated animals
of man.
And those are also becoming less viable. And that's what the whole cattle mutilation thing.
Let alone the 2,000 nuclear detonations we've done since 1945. I mean, subsurface, and air bursts. I mean, obviously it's getting the attention of somebody, and it's not a good thing for the planet. One thing we found is like the two messages we keep on getting all the time is that stop your nukes and take better care of the planet.
Yes.
Especially the children in Zimbabwe about 30 years ago. That's, when they met some little grays and they said, telepathically,
warned about the destruction of our world.
You guys are messing things up. We live here too. So.
Right. And this year, one of my favorite, like you're talking about Admiral Byrd, I was so into that story. That's one of my favorite, story, because that is Operation High Jump, I believe it is.
Yes.
Yeah, Operation High Jump. And the diary, whether people believe that or not, because reading your book, you went into a lot. President Eisenhower, President Truman, they all knew about aliens and met aliens because of some galactic federation that's going on. And that I sort of believe, because we don't really trust the government. At least I know I don't.
Oh, no.
if they're hiding anything, the government are the people to hide something like this.
Right.
But in your book, you did say that there was an age of disclosure that was supposed to be coming up, but we didn't want to do that due to the Cold War, because we didn't want to give up our nuclear arms. So now aliens are becoming more visible to people, and it's becoming released, more and more, even into the mainstream media now.
Yes.
Quite easily. Let's jump in here real quick. Is that we think now it's us, human beings, that really want to stop the disclosure. I think what we found is that the disclosure date has come and gone. And because of multiple factors, for instance, stock markets, religions, we found that out in 1938 with War of the Worlds. We still are fairly xenophobic, so we're, from the standpoint, and also too now with AI, what is faked, what isn't faked. Okay. So we've got that going on too. And it's just,
we think when they met with Eisenhower that they set like a disclosure date for the end of the century that has since come and gone. And we think that they are trying to kind of force their hand into disclosure. For instance, the Phoenix Lights. I think the Phoenix Lights are a good example of this. The UFO began in Nevada, crossed over slowly, crossed over the entire state of Arizona, making sure to go over the capital, and
went to Mexico,
and then all the way across the state and entered into Mexico. And at the time I was thinking, what is it? The child aliens stealing daddy's ship for a joyride, or what's going on here?
TSA was ticked off.
And since then, we think that that's what crop circles are too. They're trying to like reach out to our scientific community, kind of go around the military and reach out to their scientific community. And it was my idea. When I was in college, I read a book by a man named Fraser who wrote. He was in the 1800s that he published, and it was he had tracked down 500 separate cultures around the world that had a flood myth in their most ancient lore. And since that time, there's been a lot more of them discovered. So there's 1,200 separate cultures on this planet with their own Noah story. And it's 1,200 Noahs, right? So I started to surmise that probably the Great Flood really did happen. And then sure enough, about 3.5 decades ago, nanodiamonds were discovered in large quantities in the 13,000-year-old soil. There's a layer of charcoal called the Uccello horizon that spread out over 10 countries and 4 continents, northern hemisphere. And it shows that all the forests were on fire at the same time. That's kind of strange, right? Mm-hmm. And then 1,100 years above that is soil showing drastic climate upheavals. And at that time period, we had a lot of extinction. The Clovis people were wiped out, and the mammoth, and the mastodon, and the dire wolf, and the camel, and American camel.
And there are certain pockets that hung on for a little bit longer, like the giant ground sloth.
Yeah, but mostly wiped. A lot of animals were wiped out.
A lot of loss, yes.
And with the nanodiamonds, now we knew for a fact what we were dealing with. It was a celestial impact event of some kind. Because that's the only way nanodiamonds form. They dust that comes in on meteors or comets or whatever. It superheats and forms these tiny little round diamonds. And I have to apologize to you and any other readers out there. I thought it was the Hiawatha asteroid crater was the cause of this extinction.
We both did.
But it turned out later to be about 900 miles west, 500 miles on the other side of the Labrador Sea was the Younger Dryas comet impact zone. And that one has been dated to the correct time frame.
12,850 years ago.
I apologize to you readers out there. Whenever you read the word Hiawatha in our book, mentally change it to Younger Dryas comet.
Like I say, it was still Colonel Mustard with the knife, but it's Colonel Mustard with the knife, not in the kitchen, but in the dining room.
Yeah,
it's basically the same effect. But the thing is, when a comet comes through, which makes even a lot more sense, a comet is basically a dirty snowball. This one was 100 kilometers in size, which is 62 miles. And it's basically a snowball traveling at 40,000 miles an hour with a bunch of rocks. So what it's going to do is going to disperse, add a lot more water, and then it's going to cause fires
and break into pieces
all over the place. And that's really what it was. It was, I've been thinking this since like 1992. And finally, when they finally found this out a couple of years ago, I says, finally, I'm vindicated. I knew about this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know?
And so the effects would have been much the same. Giant tsunamis worldwide, scraping whatever evidence of humanity was on the surface off. And because I had ancient art history and I'd read Fraser's book, I surmised that the Great Flood was probably the reason that our race separated in the first place. The branching off of the human race
and the foreknowledge,
the breakaway would have taken place 13,000 years ago. And we think that someone on this rock that we call a planet was able to see with advanced astronomy, able to spot this comet coming and warned all the people of the world. That's what a lot of these flood myths begin with. They almost all start the same. There was a warning, either from God or God's emissary or a disembodied voice. almost always saying the same thing. Either a horrible flood is coming, you'd better build an ark or go to high ground.
Winter like you've never seen before.
Or dig in underground. And we think that the human race was more advanced 13,000 years ago than we give them credit for. There's a lot of artifacts in our ancient past that make no sense in a normal timeline, like we slowly advanced to the culture we are now. What happened was we slowly advanced to a pretty high culture prior to 13,000 years ago. And then that culture was destroyed by the comet. So what we think is that, like the movie Deep Impact, how President Morgan Freeman is warning the world that we're about to have an extinction-level event. And they have two plans. One is to send the Hollywood heroes up into space to blow up the asteroid, but Plan B was to sink these deep underground cities, take our culture, technology, knowledge, and 50,000 of our best people and put them down underground. And we think that that's precisely what happened.
Well, it's more than 50,000. It would have been on multiple continents.
Right, but each continent would have
its own arc.
One of these arcs, one or more of these arcs, right? So we think that that's exactly what happened. And these people went underground and they didn't come back to the surface because of the 1,100 years of climate upheaval that followed the impact.
Yeah, we were pushed back into an ice age, which we had just been coming out of. So, yes, there probably would have been hunting parties and, that kind of stuff. But survive, we also know, too, from our research that there was a genetic bottleneck that happened almost exactly at that time. The surface population was reduced to maybe less than 10,000 individuals at that time.
Yeah.
So now with genome mapping and DNA mapping, we know that basically we have evolved to 8 billion people from a population base of roughly about 10,000, which makes us less genetically
diverse than
we should be.
Yeah.
Yes. So
very much.
We do know that.
Genetically.
These all things are starting to click now.
Mm-hmm.
We got the data that actually confirms what we've been saying.
And I'll tell you one thing that I've always been fascinated with, and this is why I love this theory, because it makes so much sense. How many times did I say, like, when we look at ancient Egypt, or any of these ancient times, the construction, the astrological charting and everything is so precise. And you can't think that long ago anybody had that sort of knowledge, but they more than likely did. And so, yes, if these people go underground and live underground outside the knowledge of people on, the top side, 13,000 years, now they're 13,000 years even further advanced than they were.
Than we are.
Yes,
exactly.
We are now. So this is why I like, because we see so many UFOs, the Tic Tac UFO and all, they're coming from under the oceans.
Yeah.
Yes. They're mostly seen by the U.S. Navy over the ocean. So this is a great theory to say there are underground cities, underground bases, or bases in mountains. We see it on Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
There's so many solidified, or at least there's so much that has been seen and documented right now that it's so hard to ignore. No matter what you believe it is, there's definitely something else, I believe, underground than there is up in space.
There's so much that corroborates what we have seen, and it just makes sense. It's like the mom theory, like in criminal thing, is means, opportunity, and motive. Okay, and also too, humans, we don't give ourselves enough credit for being extremely adaptable. If you take a culture and sink them below surface within 1 or 2 generations, all of a sudden the surface becomes actually the scary place.
Right. There's probably a bunch of agoraphobes now.
Yeah. They grow up underground. They're used to the geothermal. They're used to the food. They're used to their society. But we think that so the flood myths almost all begin the same way. They almost all end the same way too. Yeah.
Humanity was about to be wiped out. We're devolving into cannibalism and barbarism, and we're this close from just being gone. When a god shows up or a god emissary and brings civilization back to the people. They show up frequently in pantheon families of 12. Sometimes not, sometimes alone, but frequently in pantheons of 12. What we think happened was our cousins, as we call them, because they are a breakaway branch of humanity. Our cousins decided that we need them still because we need their DNA. And also they maybe just took pity on our poor slobs on the surface that they left behind to die in droves. I think they took pity on us, came back to the surface, some of them. And that explains these advanced megalithic structures that the people to whom they are attributed cannot possibly have built. Right. The Great Pyramid is attributed to copper tool using people.
Or even
not
bronze.
Even bronze. They didn't even have bronze. And the Great Pyramid is lined with rose granite.
And andesite and other places too.
You cannot, if you took a bronze tool and smacked it on a granite boulder all day, you'll just wreck the tool. It won't do anything to the boulder, right?
Right.
And then there's Sacsayhuaman, and it's built out of andesite. There's 200-ton blocks there.
They're all welded together. There is no mortar.
There's nothing like between them you can put. And andesite's even harder than most granite. It's a 7 on the Mohs scale, whereas granite is between a 6 and 7. So, again, impossible. So many impossible structures that there's no way our Bronze Age tool using primitive cultures were doing this. We think they brought their technology with them, helped us build back into a civilization, and then went back underground where they're more comfortable and happy, I think.
Yeah, one part of our book, we have about a chapter, I think, or so, where we basically show just how frequently these extinction-level events, these
comets,
these
impact
comets,
craters,
they happen. They happen a lot more commonly than we been led to believe.
And they may have learned that about living on the surface, that it's just safer underground. No tsunamis, no hurricanes, no lightning.
And guess what? Guess what the billionaires are doing right now?
Yeah, building underground.
Our government's building underground as well.
In New Zealand, especially in New Zealand. But it's like, we know that the Aborigines in Australia had been around for at least 50,000 years. But see, that's the southern continent.
Yeah, they survived the cataclysm. Yeah, the tsunamis were just high there.
They survived, but it's like this. You got to look at what makes more sense,
right?
What's common sense, and like also too, like the necessity for all the cow DNA. They always take the surface-facing eye. They take the genitals. They take all the blood,
the sex organs,
and and they do this not just to cattle. They do it to goats. They do it to the animals of man.
Usually the animals of man. There are exceptions. There was a pile of mutilated animals found in Alaska that actually had a killer whale and elk, which are not indigenous to Alaska.
We know for sure. We know for sure about the animals of man. We definitely know about the cat.
Mostly it's that. And let's see. Did you have any questions on that part?
Well, like I said, this could be a 9-hour show because it's the fascination of it and your guys' theories and the way you wrote the book, who they are and what they're up to. It's just written in such a way that it's completely believable, especially to skeptics and all, because we're not worried about outer space, time travel, and the differences in atmosphere.
Right.
Everything makes sense when you're looking at it from a terrestrial standpoint. And we could go on and on about the craft and the government and the reverse engineering of stuff. But again, this is all stuff you could put together, but I highly recommend you go and get the book, Who They Are and What They're Up To, written by Leslie and Stephen Shaw, our guests for these past 2 episodes. And guys, I'm going to be in contact with you like more than you think, because I'm going to be throwing a lot of theories and a lot of questions out to you. And I would love for you to listen to Sunset Child's Out There podcast, who's also on our platform. I think she'd be fascinated because she's into a lot of this too, and her mind's on a different level than all of ours. And I would love to maybe even have you back again for another episode, or even on one of my own spin-off shows.
Sure.
I have that.
Yeah.
Love to.
You guys are both great. I love you to death. You really, I just, the fact that you reached out to us, I loved it just because this is my favorite topic. So I hope everybody enjoyed who they are and what they're up to. That's the book. The link's going to be in all of the episodes, and it'll also be on our Facebook group page as well. I'll make sure I got that promoted out there. Hannah, don't forget, we got Halloween coming up.
We do. We have Ann Lund coming on. Her podcast is going to drop on Halloween. So excited. Be sure to check that out. Yep. And we also have Elaine from Arcane Oracle. Her episode dropped October 1st. It's the first of every month. You know, her tarot, her horoscopes, her readings, phenomenal. Gives me chills every time I hear it. So make sure to check that out. And of course, Sunset Child.
Absolutely. And we thank you.
And us, of course.
Yeah. And of course, we have a show too, by the way, for our society. But again, we would like to really thank our guests, Leslie and Stephen Shaw. It's been great, and I'm really happy you joined us.
Yes, the knowledge is fascinating, and it's just so eye-opening. And what better guest to have on the Eye Opener Society than
eye-opening this?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We love
Thank
it.
you so much too.
Yeah, and we will see everyone next time.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.